morning and welcome to the Sports Desk live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on our Facebook page. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with our producer, Alden Iwani, our very special guest today, Albuquerque High Hall of Fame honoree on Saturday. One of the best basketball, arguably, a lot of people say the best basketball player Albuquerque High has ever produced. Stevie Rogers, thanks for joining the show. You know, Stevie, Saturday, a big induction ceremony, and I want to mention Andy Rivera, Trini Salas, Manny Otero. They did a great job. You were inducted along with the late Larry Williams, Larry Jab Williams, who was a very good friend of both of ours. I'm very sad he's not here today, you know, but he was honored. Malcolm Stafford, a great running back and a great basketball player. Loretta Garcia, Eddie Flores, and Zara Katswiga. I don't know if a track star. So you were honored along with those inductees on Saturday. Stevie, what did that mean to you? You know, again, they had a great ceremony there. It's in the Commons area, mariachis, breakfast, a lot of old Bulldog heads were there. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was a very proud moment. To still have that ageless vibe in the building. Felt like family. Everyone speaking to one another. It was a great atmosphere.
You know, Stevie, when you talk about, you know, I went to Highland, I played at Highland, I coached at Highland, and, you know, you and I, we played at basketball at Dennis Chavez together. But when you talk about that Dennis Chavez Community Center, you talk about that Bulldog vibe. And they talk about Bulldog pride. And back in the day when you played, we got some pictures in the second half of the show here. Talk a little bit about that because you mentioned that, Bulldog vibe. Talk a little bit about that because you were a big part of that.
Yeah, Dennis Chavez was a community center that we all could come together as one. You know, we all had history behind us, but it was a time to just enjoy ourselves and have a workout, and it was just a good atmosphere.
You know, Stevie, those games at Dennis Chavez, you know, the late Larry Williams would open the gym. And when he put the key in the door Sunday morning, it was as if it was the NBA championship. You had guys like, you know, the Bulldog legend Arnold Senna, Ben Santisteban, Anthony Collins, Dexter Bess, Ernest Jenkins, Richard Jenkins, Donald Mitchell, Lawrence Mitchell. So guys, Garrett Gandy, guys from the neighborhood. You know, so when you talk about that, the atmosphere, you said that, it was a it was a Bulldog vibe on Saturday. Mention that because, you know, again, the mariachis, Coach Ron Estrada, you had so many people there from the past. Talk a little bit about that ceremony.
Yeah, I was happy that the younger people, they recognized what the older guys did in the past. You know, they looked up to us, and that meant a lot because they said their mothers and fathers brought them to the games, and it's a memory that they never lost. So I'm glad I was part of that.
You know, Stevie, growing up, you grew up in the Kirtland edition in the Kirk, and there's a lot of Bulldogs to look up to at that time. You know, the late Alvin Metters, Ron Padrell, the Iron Five, Rick Clark, Paul Soto, Phil Edmond. I'm hesitant to mention Lawrence Mitchell, you know, so many, because if I don't mention one, I miss out on somebody. Who were the guys when you grew up in the Kirk that you looked up to?
The most memorable one was Richard Jenkins. And the reason why I tell this story is because we could walk to the park with no ball, knowing that we can go to his house and get a ball. You know, that's the most memorable thing I have. But just walking around the Kirkland edition, it was still a Bulldog vibe because, you know, we knew the ones who grew up before us lived there, and they had stories, and we wanted to become part of those stories.
And you did. And, you know, when you mentioned Richard, that guy is one of the greatest guards Albuquerque High ever had. You know, his son Damian was a dynamite guard as well. So was his other son Josh for Valley. But when you mentioned Richard and then Ernest, and when you played against those guys, I remember playing against Ernest. Ernest, man, there was no quarter given with Ernest. Ernest played hard. Ernest wanted to win. And I think when you mentioned that Albuquerque High vibe, when you mentioned everybody coming together as you did, it was a winning vibe.
I was blessed. I was younger, but they treated me in a way that very respectful, but a learning opportunity also. I'll never forget the way they treated me as a young man to help me grow to the person I am now.
And you know what, Steve? A lot of teachers, right? Not just Richard. There was, Alvin Metters, right? I mean, there's so many teachers, and giving back to the community later. Coach Metters went, was the director of Thomas Bell Community Center and gave back to the community. There's so many teachers that you had when you were growing up.
Yeah, I'm very blessed that I grew up in that neighborhood with all those successful men who didn't mind passing down their knowledge, and I was willing to accept it.
A lot of toughness too, right? I mean, when you talk about the Bulldog vibe, there was just that vibe about their, not going to lose. And I think one of the things that Manny Otero said this to me a couple years ago. Coach Holzman did a fantastic job of getting guys from different barrios to play together. Wells, Sanjo, Barelas, the Kirk, the Sticks, as they call it. Yeah. Coach Holzman got all those guys to play together.
Yes. We all were blessed to be a part of Holzman's teachings. He put a lot of discipline upon me at the time that I needed it in my life, and I always will be grateful for him for everything he's done also.
He's still with us, thank God, and he won 7 championships. You were a part of that 77 championship team with Trini Salas, Tony Gutierrez, Frankie Olguin. I think sometimes people forget how good Frankie was, man. And Tony and Trini, Martin Schnorr. They beat Highland 55-49. And I remember being at that game, 16,000 fans there. Yeah. And we'll talk about the 78 game here in a minute. But talk a little bit about being part of that championship team in 77.
That team, we were like family. In the locker room, on the court, off the court. Yeah, I think that really played a big role in the success of that team, that we all got along so well. And on the court, there was a good skill level to go along with it.
You talk about, I played a lot of basketball with Trini Salas in my adult life, and against Tony Gutierrez, not so much Frank. Frank had moved away. But I think you talk about the toughness of that team, because that team won the championship by 5. A slow-down game, Tom Hogue at Highland wanted to slow the ball a little bit, and they did. But Albuquerque High came out on top. And as you mentioned, just the players you had on your team, everybody came together.
Yeah. One thing about Albuquerque High and the Bulldogs, defense came first. We all had offensive skills, but defense was part of the key to our success.
Talk a little bit about Coach Holzman's a fantastic coach. We know that. He surrounded himself with some great assistants. But one of the coaches I always hear about the defensive part was the late Abe Estrada. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what he meant to the defensive pressure and the defensive philosophy that Albuquerque High had.
Yeah, Abe, he made sure the intensity was at each and every practice. He would blow his whistle and say, "Hold on, let's get this defense going." Yeah, and that played a big part of the AHS atmosphere. And
Steve, on that zone defense, they had you up top.
Oh, yeah.
They had you up top. You got the length. You steal the ball. You knock. And then you're going to score in transition. Talk a little bit about. People would say, I remember you playing there at that position, and a lot of people would say, why isn't he inside? Talk a little bit about why Coach Holzman put you on the top of that zone.
Well, I was used to playing that position when I was younger. I was only about 5'8", 5'10". So in my mind, I kind of mastered that area, and I was blessed that he let me to continue to be in my zone.
It paid off,
yeah.
Because again, you got a lot of steals, deflected a lot of passes, and it was tough for offenses to get into their offense because of your length, your length of that you had.
Yeah.
And then you had we'll talk about Bobby Sweet in a minute, because Bobby Sweet was one of the best defenders Albuquerque High ever had. There's no doubt about it. But going into 78, now 78, you're the defending champions, and your teammates, and you mentioned this to me, and I remember Ruben Navarrete, Bobby Sweet, Ernie Lucero. You had Robert Jacobs, Robert Dean used to come down and play basketball with us at Whittier a lot, so I remember Robert very well. Of course, his brother Kenny played at Highland, was a heck of a player, and a heck of a football player too. So you had that team there, and you go in against Santa Fe in the championship in 78, and against your future teammate Ernie Padilla and your future college coach Lenny Roybal, who I had a chance to talk to this morning. What do you remember about that game? That was again, Santa Fe, Robbie Wren, Ronnie Rodriguez, Walker, Ortiz, that's a loaded team.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that game?
That's what I remember, them being loaded. No matter who came in, they didn't lose a beat. Five tough players on the court at all times. But me and my other teammates, we tried our best. Came up a little short, but they recognized what we had also.
You mentioned the battles that you had all year with him, because I think you played them
Yeah.
3 or 4 times. Of course, the late Ernie Lucero, we have to mention him too. Heck of a guy, man. Heck of a ball player, solid. But that night, and I think I told you this in our conversation. I talked to Coach Roybal this morning, and I mentioned, Coach Roybal and I have disagreed about this, but when I went into the pit that night, there were 17,000 to 18,000, I think. I might have set the record, although Arnold Senna said the 81 Hobbs versus Albuquerque High championship game might have set the record. But at that time in 78, when I went into the pit that night, I thought Santa Fe had more fans than Albuquerque High. I don't know, though. Coach Roybal thought that too, but talk about the atmosphere that night, because it was really rocking.
Anyone who's ran down that ramp before and experienced that sound, it's amazing. I wish I could do it all over again now, but I'm just blessed that I had a chance to be in that atmosphere.
No, it was an incredible one. You did it. And the thing was, think about it, in high school, okay, so for Highland versus Albuquerque High in 77, it's 16,000. And it's, I was there at that game too. So you run down there, and then you run down in 78, and there's more. And when you mentioned that, Steve, and I got a chance to run down the ramp, hey, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Talk a little bit about the adrenaline when you ran down there.
I'm a player who likes to play off sight, so the excitement brings the sight out of me and hopefully others. It's just a great atmosphere. It's just a buzz, a vibe.
And then plus a rivalry with Santa Fe that you had. And Coach Roybal was very complimentary. We'll get to what he said here. And Coach Roybal has been around, northern New Mexico basketball for a long time. So he was, like I said, very complimentary of you. But I kind of thought, and I asked Ernie Padilla about this, you never mentioned when you played for the College of Santa Fe, you and him never talked about that Santa Fe and Albuquerque High game in 78. Did you guys ever mention that?
No, he mostly concentrated on what was going on at that time, the college level. But I like to give it up to Coach Roybal also. He was a great players coach. I'll never forget that. I like Roybal very much. Thanks, Coach, for all you've done for me.
He's going to love that. And that's my first time this morning that I ever talked to him. And he was doing some woodworking when I talked to him. And I've got some good things that he said about you. But that team that we'll get to that too. The team that you played with at the College of Santa Fe in 1982 and 83. Holy moly! Wow, what a team! And you went pretty far with that team. And we'll get to that in the second half of the show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more with the Albuquerque High Sports Hall of Fame inductee Stevie Rogers after these messages on the Sports Desk.
Jacobson's going to take third. English, the throw to Utash. Not in time, so 2 stolen bases here.
RBI single for Pine. His first time up, and now another one. Into left field, a base hit. 1 run scores. They will hold Marquez at third.
Here comes a pitch from Bertel. That ball is lifted and well hit to left. Long run, Martinez. It'll drop fair in front of the wall. It's an RBI double off the bat of Gonzalez. It's cut the lead in half.
The pitch is a high fly ball, deep to left, at the wall and off the wall. Runner will round third and come home. Cutoff man bobbles it. And Sandia will get a run back on the RBI double by Floyd.
Colton Floyd rips that one towards center. That one's going to drop. It'll score Sotelo. Figueroa Brito comes across as well. They will not attempt a throw to home plate. A 2-run, 2 RBI double.
Off-speed pitch pulled to the left side there. Long run, plenty of room, and a sliding catch in left by Smith. Put us.
The northeast side of Albuquerque. That one's lined into left center field. That ball is hit. What a catch by the left fielder out there. That's Salas.
That one's tapped back up the middle. It's a high hop to Cirelio Martinez. And that's a double play. 6-3 stepped on the bag. This is a 1-1. Tap back to short. Martinez has to wait on it. He'll step on the bag for one. They'll scoop it first. In time for the 6-3 double play ball. Second time today that Cirelio Martinez.
Chopper, and that one's going to hit the gap. That'll score Byers. Utash on a full head of steam all the way to home plate. Throw is not in time. A 2 RBI single for JD Diaz.
Breaking ball, he got the pitch he needed, lifts it deep to left center, looks up and it's gone! Braden Reynolds starts the Cars. It's a 3-run homer. And game number 2 comes to an abrupt end as the Bears explode in inning number 5.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Networks.
I'm David C. Chavez, personal injury attorney. Our law firm was founded by my father, Thibaut J. Chavez, with one goal, to get New Mexicans the help they need. That's why we built a different kind of law firm. We focus on family values, dedicated service, and we make a real contribution by giving back to our communities. We can't change what happened to you or your loved ones, but we can help you get back on the road to recovery. We're by your side, and we're still as local as red and green.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on our Facebook page. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Our very special guest, Albuquerque Sports Hall of Fame inductee, Stevie Rogers. And, you know, Stevie, again, there's a lot of, I know a lot of Bulldogs, man, and a lot of them say you're the best player at Albuquerque High, arguably, they ever had. And there's a list. We can go down. There's so many guys. Like I said, I'm hesitant to mention one because they're friends. I'm friends with a lot of them. But you're right there at the top of the list, man. So we appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
You know, Steve. In the first half, we talked about you growing up in the Kirk and looking up to Richard Jenkins. I thought that was a great story. You know, the late Richard Jenkins was definitely one of the best guards Albuquerque High ever had. A lefty, could shoot, could pass. Oh man! Plus he had that chip. He had that chip on his shoulder, man. You know, he was going to make the plays and he was going to try to embarrass you while doing it. So thought that was a great story. You know, I want to ask you about the 1978 North-South All-Star game. Now, we'll talk about Hobbs as a rival later, but that 78 All-Star game, and you had Mike Romero of Bernalillo as one of your teammates, and Mike being one of the best guards New Mexico's ever seen. There's no doubt about it. But there was a duel there between you and the late Jeffrey Taylor of Hobbs, who actually played 3 years in the NBA, and I don't think I ever saw anybody jump as high as I saw him jump. What's your memories of that game? I still remember that was a duel, man. That was a heck of a game. What do you remember about that game?
I just remembered that the crowd had expectations of what was going to happen. He was well known from the South. I was well known from the North. along with others. But every time he did something, it's like the crowd was expecting something from our side. And I think I was blessed to fulfill some excitement in the gym that night.
You know what? That's putting it mildly. It really is. We got some pictures here that we're going to get up here in just a second. But that was a time when the North-South All-Star Game still drew 10 to 12, 13,000 fans for that game. And I remember being there. There's you in All-City selection in 1978. That's a great picture of you right there. And another one, you on McDonald's nominee All-American. There's another great picture. So that game there was the expectations, and I thought that was it. I remember the fans because Jeffrey, the PA announcer, Jeffrey Taylor, and then you go down and score back and forth, and then of course Mike Romero is getting his too. Man, that guy was an amazing guard. There's a great picture of you there with Coach Holzman and his misses there. A great picture. Stevie, I want to. That was a great duel there between you and Jeffrey Taylor. Hobbs as a rival. Talk a little bit about that because Albuquerque High and Hobbs in the late 70s just seemed to always clash. Albuquerque High came out on top, more than once.
Going to Albuquerque High, Coach Holzman knew that Hobbs would be there in the finals. So what he did, particularly every practice, at the end of practice, we faced the press because he was getting us ready for the state because we knew we would go against Hobbs.
All the time, right?
Every single day we practiced against the press. So that's how we were ready each and every time.
And you had the guards. You had some good guards too. That helped.
Yeah, good guards always help. It relieves the pressure, and that's what I like.
You did some ball handling yourself.
Once upon a time, that was my position. And it kind of helped me when I grew, that I still had some ball handling skills.
I'd say a few. Yeah, I'd say a few. Stevie, I'm glad you mentioned that about what Coach Holzman's preparation was. I've heard that before. Coach Metters, the late Coach Metters, had mentioned sometimes he'd put 7 guys on the floor to simulate their press. So you guys were always, and that press came at you in waves. It started from the opening tip and didn't stop till the final buzzer. But I think in your preparations for practice, you were always ready for that. I want to go to your 82-83 College of Santa Fe team that got to the national semifinals. And I'm going to have a quote here from Coach Roybal. But let's go over the roster. Ernie Padilla, Ben Gomez, Greg Metzo, Kirk Swat Richards, Mike McCombs. That is a loaded team. Yourself, Daryl Knight. That's a loaded team. Tell us that's a great team. You'd gone to Stephen F. Austin. You wanted to go to the College of Santa Fe to play with your friend Bobby Sweet, and Bobby had graduated, I believe, the year before. But talk a little bit about that team. There was a very, very good team back in the day. Talk a little bit about that team.
The thing I most remember about that team is Coach Roybal, with all that talent, he found a way to bring us together. So we didn't play as individuals. We played as a team. Practices were quite intense, but game time, we all came together, and that was one of the most unbelievable teams that I ever been on.
Oh, you're a big part of it. I believe you averaged about 18 points a game. Talk about Metzo, Greg Metzo inside, Mike McCombs, but Kirk Swat Richards was 6'10". Coach Roybal said to me this morning he believes if he hadn't got hurt, you guys would have won it all.
No doubt. We hadn't lost a game that second semester. I came home to Albuquerque. I told my brother Mike, I said, from here on, we're not losing. And we went far, far, far. It was too bad we lost our big man, or we definitely would have won it all that year.
Talk a little bit about I played with him one time, and true to his name, he swatted everything in sight. Talk about what a rim protector he was.
Yeah. You see 6'10", 7-footers on TV, but to actually be on the court with one who could also jump, it's incredible. I mean, he made my job a lot easier. I'm just thankful that I had a chance to enjoy the excitement of playing.
Imagine with your wingspan and his, and then you got Metzo, and then you've got McCombs. That's a heck of a, and then Daryl Knight, and then Ernie. That is really one heck of a front line. What I wanted to tell you is that Coach Roybal, I asked him about you. humble. His quietness brought a focus because he said a lot of the guys, had different attitudes, but he thought that your humbleness brought a focus to the team.
Yeah. I'm just always trying to be focused at the time of each game. Some people see it as humble or a quiet player, but inside, I'm focused.
There's no doubt about it. In fact, when I talked to, we're on a group text, I told you George Scott, Ben Esteban, Ron Beach, and Arnold Senna called you the silent assassin. And that's kind of what Coach Roybal said today. Everybody knows, everybody's different about how they approach the game. We talked about Ernest Jenkins and Richard Jenkins, the late Larry Williams. They had a different focus. You had a different one too, but you were always ready.
Yes. The night before, that's when I'm mostly preparing for the next day. You want to be on top of whatever is at hand. And I don't know. I'm just kind of like a mental guy who likes to get prepared mentally. Your skill level, it'll kick in, but you got to be prepared mentally.
You had a different way. I think, I think of you the way I think of Kareem, right? Kareem was very quiet guy. They said before the game he would read, and people would try to talk to him, tap him on the shoulder, and he'd look at them like, hey, I'm getting prepared, leave me alone. So I think everybody's got their way of preparing, and I think you had your way.
Yes. My way was, by the time I got to the locker room, I'm ready to go. Let coach do his thing with the pregame talk, but I'm ready. Once I'm ready for warm-ups, layups, let's get it on. Game time.
You got to love it, man, because everybody's got, their way. I remember being so nervous I'd almost throw up. I had my way. You had your way. All the players we mentioned had their way. I want to ask you, we got about a couple minutes here. 8-ball. Okay, the 8-ball team you played on, we have to mention that. Arnold Senna, the late Mitch Alexander, Ernest Jenkins, Anthony Collins, Larry Williams. I don't know if I'm missing anybody. Dexter Bess. Dexter Bess was an amazing player. Talk a little bit about that team, because that team beat a lot of teams. Mm-hmm. I think your brother was on it too.
Yeah.
Mike Rogers, your brother Mike, who was a heck of a player himself.
That group of guys, we just played what was instilled upon us from Albuquerque High. Even though we all had graduated years ago, but we came together on the court just like we were old dogs.
People didn't know who Dexter Bess was, but Dexter was powerful, man. That guy was strong.
Yeah. Dexter came from out of town, and he heard about Dennis Chavez Gym, so he came to see what was going over there. And he ran across a group of guys who had talent, but his talent was right there also.
That guy would dunk, and I remember him dunking at Trumbull one time, and the whole basket swayed. That's how strong he was.
Yeah, he was a strong player. He taught me there are some people out there who can box out pretty hard.
Oh, man. Yeah. If you got blocked out by him, I'll tell you what, you felt it. Stevie Rogers, Albuquerque High Hall of Fame inductee on Saturday, and again, arguably one of the best or the best Albuquerque High basketball player we ever saw. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed myself.
You bet. For producer Alden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.